Have you ever wondered why, in a universe where everything dies, something within you feels eternal? Strange, isn't it? We fear death as the ultimate end, yet carry an inexplicable certainty that some essence of our being cannot be extinguished. This contradiction haunts our existence. We live in bodies that decay, yet harbor a profound intuition that our consciousness transcends physical dissolution. What if this paradox isn't merely wishful thinking, but points to a forgotten truth? What if the ancient Gnostics discovered something about the nature of the soul that modern materialism has buried beneath layers of rationalism and fear? The greatest deception may not be believing in eternal life, but accepting that consciousness can ever truly die. Perhaps what we've been taught about death is the true illusion, a veil cast over a reality too magnificent for the unprepared mind to comprehend. As we journey together through this exploration, prepare to question everything you've been told about your finite nature. What awaits beyond this veil isn't just another perspective, but a remembrance of what your soul has always known. Hidden within ancient texts, buried beneath centuries of dogmatic interpretation and institutional suppression, lies a radical understanding of human immortality that few have dared to fully embrace. The Gnostic tradition, preserved in fragments through the Nag Hammadi library, the Gospel of Thomas, and the Pistis Sophia, speaks of an eternal spark within human consciousness that cannot be created or destroyed. This divine fragment, which the Gnostics called the pneuma, or spiritual essence, exists beyond the realm of time and material decay. When the scrolls were discovered in 1945 near the Egyptian town of Nag Hammadi, they revealed teachings so revolutionary that they challenge our entire understanding of life, death, and consciousness. These weren't mere philosophical speculations, but direct experiential insights from those who had awakened to their own divine nature. The Gnostics understood something profound, that the soul's immortality isn't a reward granted by external authority, but an inherent quality of consciousness itself. They spoke of remembrance rather than salvation, of gnosis, direct knowing, rather than blind faith. This knowing wasn't intellectual, but a visceral recognition that the essence of who we are was never born and therefore can never die. What makes these teachings so dangerous to conventional thinking is their implication that immortality isn't something to be achieved, but something to be recognized, a truth already present within each of us, waiting to be uncovered beneath the layers of forgetting that constitute our earthly existence. If these words resonate with something deep within you, a knowing that predates your physical birth, then perhaps you've found your way to this moment by design rather than chance. This exploration isn't meant for everyone. It speaks to those who sense there's more to existence than what appears on the surface, those who feel a stirring of recognition when truth is spoken. If you're drawn to uncover the mysteries of consciousness that conventional religion and materialistic science have either misunderstood or deliberately obscured, join us on this journey of remembrance. Subscribe to this channel and become part of a community of seekers who understand that true spirituality isn't about blind adherence to doctrine, but about awakening to our own divine nature. Each video we share is designed as a key, unlocking different chambers of forgotten wisdom. By subscribing, you're not merely following content, you're participating in a collective remembrance. You're declaring your readiness to remember what your soul has always known, that the essence of who you are transcends the boundaries of birth and death. Join those who have chosen to walk the path of gnosis, the direct knowing that transforms not just belief, but the very foundation of being. To understand the Gnostic view of the immortal soul, we must first journey into their cosmological framework, a rich tapestry of symbols that describe not just the universe, but the inner landscape of human consciousness. In the beginning, according to Gnostic creation myths, existed the pleroma, the fullness, the totality of divine reality. From this ineffable source emanated divine beings called eons, expressions of the unknowable God's attributes. Among these was Sophia, wisdom, whose passionate desire to understand her origin led to a cosmic drama. In her longing, she gave birth to an incomplete being, the Demiurge, who, unaware of the higher realms, believed himself to be the supreme god. This ignorant creator, whom the Gnostics sometimes identified with the God of the Old Testament, fashioned the material world as a flawed replica of the divine realm and imprisoned within it fragments of the divine light, our human souls. The Demiurge, assisted by his servants the Archons, rulers or authorities, created a system of control designed to keep humanity ignorant of their true divine nature. These Archons weren't merely cosmic entities, but represented the forces of limitation, the laws of nature, time, and physical necessity that bind consciousness to material existence. Yet despite this imprisonment, each human carries within them a divine spark, a fragment of the original light that cannot be extinguished by physical death. This spark remains connected to its source in the pleroma, though this connection is forgotten in the amnesia of material existence. The Gnostics saw human life as a battlefield where the forces of ignorance, the Demiurge and his Archons, wage war against the awakening of divine consciousness. Death of the physical body was never seen as the end, but merely a transition, the divine spark returning to its source or continuing its journey through subsequent embodiments until gnosis, awakening, is achieved. This mythic framework wasn't intended as literal history, but as a psychological map of the soul's journey from ignorance to enlightenment. The Demiurge represents not an actual cosmic tyrant, but the limited ego mind that believes itself separate from the whole. The Archons symbolize the thought patterns, cultural conditioning, and materialistic values that keep us trapped in limited identity. And Sophia, divine wisdom, represents the soul's innate longing to remember its true nature. This cosmic drama is not happening in some distant realm, but within the consciousness of each person who has forgotten their divine origin. What if these ancient myths were never meant to be taken literally, but rather as profound metaphors for the architecture of human consciousness? The revolutionary insight of Gnostic thought is that the cosmic drama isn't happening out there, but within the landscape of our own awareness. The immortality of the soul becomes not a supernatural claim, but a psychological reality when we understand the true nature of consciousness itself. Consider the Demiurge not as a cosmic entity, but as the egoic mind, that aspect of consciousness that believes itself separate, independent, and ultimately mortal. This false creator fashions an identity from myths, beliefs, and cultural conditioning, then mistakes this temporary construction for the totality of self. It lives in perpetual fear of its own dissolution. The Archons, in this psychological reading, become the thought patterns and belief systems that maintain the illusion of separation, particularly the fundamental belief in death as an absolute end. They are the guardians of limitation, the voices that whisper, "You are merely this body," and "consciousness is merely a function of the brain." But deeper than these structures of limitation lies what the Gnostics called the pneuma, the divine breath or spark that animates consciousness itself. This is not a supernatural addition to human nature, but its fundamental ground. It is not something you have, but what you are at the most essential level. When the Gnostics spoke of this spark being uncreated, they were pointing to a profound insight that modern quantum physics is only beginning to approach, that consciousness itself may be primary, not derivative. The material brain may be a receiver or translator of consciousness rather than its source. If consciousness is fundamental rather than emergent, then it cannot be destroyed by physical death, any more than the ocean ceases to exist when a wave returns to its surface. The wave form disappears, but the water remains. Similarly, the particular pattern of identity that we call me may dissolve at death, but the awareness that animated it returns to the ground of being from which it arose. This is not mystical speculation, but a different interpretation of the same evidence we all experience, the fact of being aware. The Gnostics recognized that consciousness itself has qualities that transcend materiality. It has no location, no weight, no physical properties that can be measured. It is, in essence, non-local and therefore not subject to the laws of physical decay. What dies is not consciousness itself, but a particular configuration of consciousness identified with a body and personality. The light remains, only the lamp changes. This understanding transforms death from an existential threat to a transition and within a larger continuity of awareness. The soul's immortality is not a future reward, but a present reality, hidden only by our identification with that which is temporary. If something within you has stirred in recognition while hearing these words, if you've felt a resonance beyond intellectual agreement, honor that response. This isn't merely about accumulating spiritual concepts, but about remembering a truth your soul has always known. When ancient wisdom illuminates something within your own experience, acknowledge that moment of clarity. Consider expressing your resonance through a simple gesture, like this video, not as approval of content, but as recognition of truth. This small action creates ripples in the collective field of awareness, helping others discover these forgotten teachings. Each acknowledgement becomes a light in the darkness, a signal to fellow seekers that they are not alone in questioning the materialist paradigm that reduces consciousness to mere brain function. In Gnostic understanding, recognition itself is a spiritual act, the moment when the divine spark within you responds to truth. When you recognize the eternal nature of your own awareness, you participate in the awakening of collective consciousness. Your engagement becomes part of a larger pattern of remembrance unfolding across humanity. Like ancient initiates who would share symbols of recognition with one another, your simple gesture helps build a community of those who remember their immortal nature. If these words have awakened something within you, let that awakening be known. Look at your own experience of being alive, not the philosophical concepts about life, but the raw, immediate experience of consciousness itself. Haven't you noticed that while everything about you changes constantly, your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your circumstances, something remains unchanged? There is a witnessing presence that has been with you since your earliest memories, observing the parade of experiences without itself being altered by them. You are not the same person you were as a child. Your cells have replaced themselves many times over. Your personality has transformed. Your beliefs have evolved. Yet something in you knows itself as the same awareness that has been present throughout. What is this unchanging element that persists amid constant change? Consider your dreams. In them, you experience entirely different worlds and identities. Yet, something within you knows itself as the dreamer, rather than the dream. Upon waking, you don't wonder which is the real you, the dream character or the waking self, because something within you transcends both states. This continuity of awareness across different states of consciousness offers a clue to what the Gnostics understood about the soul's nature. You fear death because you identify with that which changes, the body, the personality, the social identity. But what if your essence is this unchanging awareness itself? What if you are not primarily a physical being having occasional spiritual experiences, but a spiritual being having a temporary physical experience? The anxiety about death exists only because you've forgotten what you truly are. When you identify with the wave rather than the ocean, you fear the wave's inevitable crash upon the shore. But if you recognize yourself as the water itself, what is there to fear? The Gnostics saw that our attachment to the temporary aspects of self creates the illusion of mortality. Your body will certainly die. This is not in question. Your personality, with its particular configuration of preferences, memories, and habits, will dissolve. But the awareness that has witnessed your entire life journey, that which knows itself as I am, was never born and therefore cannot die. It exists prior to form and continues beyond form. This is not a belief to accept, but an insight to verify in your own experience. In moments of deep meditation or spontaneous presence, haven't you touched a dimension of being that feels timeless, boundless, and inherently complete? Haven't you sensed, in moments of profound stillness, that what you are at the deepest level cannot be threatened by anything, including physical death? This recognition isn't reserved for mystics or saints. It's available whenever attention turns toward its own source. What the Gnostics understood, and what modern neuroscience is only beginning to consider, is that consciousness itself may be fundamental rather than derivative. If awareness is not produced by the brain, but rather focused through it, like light through a prism, then the death of the body doesn't extinguish consciousness, but simply releases it from its particular configuration. The divine spark returns to the fire from which it came. This understanding integrates the mythic, philosophical, and experiential dimensions of the soul's immortality. The pleroma of Gnostic cosmology becomes recognizable as the ground of being from which all individual consciousness arises and to which it returns. The Demiurge and Archons represent not just cosmic entities, but the psychological structures that maintain the illusion of separation and finitude. And the divine spark becomes not a theological concept, but the direct experience of your own aware presence. This integration transforms our relationship with death entirely. Rather than the ultimate enemy to be feared or the final extinguishment of being, death becomes a transition within a larger continuity of awareness. The particular waveform that you currently identify as me will certainly dissolve back into the ocean of consciousness. But nothing essential is lost in this dissolution. Only the temporary form changes. The essence remains. This is why the Gnostic texts speak not of achieving immortality, but of remembering it, of recognizing what has always been true beneath the veil of forgetting. The soul doesn't need to become immortal. It needs to recognize that it already is, and always has been, beyond the reach of death. This recognition doesn't come through intellectual agreement, but through direct knowing, gnosis, that transforms the very foundation of identity. When you know yourself as the witnessing awareness rather than just the temporary contents of awareness, the fear of death loses its grip. What dies is not you, but a particular expression of you, like a wave returning to the ocean or a character in a dream when the dreamer awakens. Perhaps now we can see the initial paradox in a new light. We began by noting the strange contradiction that we live in mortal bodies, yet carry an intuition of immortality. But this contradiction exists only when we misidentify with the temporary aspects of self. When we recognize our essence as the awareness that witnesses the changing parade of experience, the paradox dissolves. The body dies, but you are not only the body. The personality dissolves, but you are not only the personality. What you are at the most fundamental level, pure awareness itself, was never born, and therefore cannot die. It is not subject to time because it is the space in which time itself appears. The ancient Gnostics weren't offering a comforting belief system, but pointing to a direct recognition available to anyone who looks deeply enough into their own nature. They understood that immortality isn't something to be achieved in the future, but a present reality hidden by our identification with that which is temporary. The divine spark within you, your true essence, doesn't need to be saved or perfected. It needs only to be recognized beneath the layers of forgetting that constitute the human condition. In this recognition lies true liberation, not an escape from death, but the realization that what you essentially are was never subject to death in the first place. The light of awareness that reads these words right now is the same light that has illuminated every moment of your existence. It was present before your birth and will continue beyond the death of the form you currently inhabit. Not as a supernatural soul floating in some ethereal realm, but as the fundamental ground of consciousness itself, which manifests in countless forms but is not limited to any of them. In the silence of your own being, beyond thought and emotion, this timeless presence can be directly known. not believed in, but recognized as the very core of what you are. What has this exploration awakened within you? As these words settle into the silence of your awareness, I invite you to pause and notice what remains when conceptual thinking subsides. Is there a recognition stirring beneath the surface of thought, a knowing that transcends intellectual understanding? In the Gnostic tradition, the most profound truths were never merely discussed but directly experienced in the sanctuary of one's own consciousness. Share with us the single word that captures what you've recognized about your own immortal nature. Type essence in the comments if you've glimpsed the unchanging awareness behind all changing forms. Or remember if these words have helped you recollect what your soul has always known. This simple act of naming your insight creates a bridge between inner recognition and shared understanding, a testament to the eternal light that shines through each of us in unique yet universal